Madden and Benz, Unfiltered, on a Monday before Monday Night Football for the Steelers. Tonight they play the Cleveland Browns at Acrisure Stadium. Tim Benz and Mark Madden. Mark back from a couple days off, going to see Guns N' Roses down in Florida. We'll recap that in a little bit. But first and foremost, Mark, we've had a week to ruminate on this. Any changes of opinion, any sort of different thoughts going into Game 2 for the Steelers after maybe what you saw in the NFL this weekend that might have adjusted your opinion after the way they got blown out against the Niners in Week 1?
Well, like we said on the podcast, Tim, I think that the NFL needs more exhibition games. Needs a subjective word. I think if they had more exhibition games, or if the first stringers played more, and the ones they do have, we'd see better football. The sloppiness level in the NFL these first 2 weeks has been almost unspeakable. Don't you agree, to say nothing of the mental errors committed?
I think there's something to be said for that, yes, because largely, Mark, I think, and I wrote about this on Friday, for as bad as the Steelers were, there were a lot of teams that we all thought would be better than the Steelers coming into this season that were almost as bad as they were in Week 1. There were seven of the playoff teams from last year that lost in Week 1. Some of them bounced back in Week 2. Some of them did not, like the Bengals, for instance. And it makes me wonder, to your point, are the Bengals so bad coming out of the gates again that maybe we're having a bit of an inflated view of who the Browns are coming into Monday Night Football?
Well, yeah, and the Bengals don't play nobody in the preseason, Tim. Their first string barely gets on the field. And I think between that and the Burrow calf injury, which has apparently been retweaked, maybe that's a reflection of that. But here's another trend I noticed. I forget if it included the Sunday night game or not. But of the NFL's teams this weekend, all 30 of them, excluding the 2 playing tonight, 24 of them scored.
Because there's 2 Monday night games. There's the Saints-Panthers game tonight.
Oh, God, they're doing that again?
Yeah, they are. And I don't know why. There's all the teams, but the Saints are in the central time zone. That's as far west as we're going, and they're bothering to put 2 night games on at the same time. I don't get it. I think it's stupid.
Well, I just hope the Saints can win one for their new coach, Mike Babcock. Okay, of the 28 teams then that have played going in tonight, I believe 24 of them scored 20 points or more. That's how the league is. And the Steelers just, I don't think, get that. Not that they could have scored 20 points even playing wide open against San Francisco, but I think it's going to take 20 points at least, minimum, to win just about every game this year. And I'm not sure the Steelers are prepared for that. Now, this feels like the kind of game Pittsburgh wins, even though Cleveland should. You know what I mean?
Oh, I do, yes.
I think every matchup favors Cleveland. You know, Cleveland's pass rush and their cornerbacks, Nick Chubb against no Cam Hayward. But I think if the Steelers lose, their season's already on a one-way trip to Palookaville. Okay, 0-2, when 2 teams in your division would be 2-0. That doesn't seem like a big deal, Tim, after just 2 weeks, but it probably is. And the AFC overall looking for a wild card. It's such a great conference. Although look at the LA Chargers. God, I overestimate them every year, Tim.
I told you they were my team to backslide out of the playoffs. If we were looking for one team that was going to go out where the Steelers could get in, I said the Chargers, just for that reason. They do it every year. And they were scheduled to do it so big that they missed the playoffs, in my opinion.
Now, yeah, and you know what Pompiani called them on Twitter? Paper champions.
Oh, he went Lethon Flowers on us, huh?
Yeah, that's great, isn't it? But I think that the Steelers just have more to lose and so will probably win. That's if they let it translate into urgency. Have you ever noticed the Steelers are always like, we'll be okay after, 4 bad starts in the last 5 seasons? Lots of football left. We'll be all right. And I just hope tonight that translates into urgency.
Well, the only season they really ended up being all right was when they started well out of that 5-year block that you're talking about.
Yeah, they started 11-0, then lost 5 of their last 6.
Then they collapsed down the stretch, right?
And that's a question no one wants to ask about Coach T, who's never had a losing season, is why can't his teams put together complete seasons anymore? And I saw one of his quotes, stuff like this gets me so mad. Well, with rookies, it's about experience. Did you see that quote, Tim? Very generic.
Yeah, I did. And then I saw Christian Gonzalez do what he did in the Sunday night game last night and wondered where Joey Porter was.
Well, never mind that. I see what Patrick Peterson and Dan Moore Jr. are doing with their wealth of experience, which is staking the joint out against San Francisco. I just don't think this team remembers how to be urgent anymore. I know for sure this coach doesn't know how to be urgent anymore. I think Foreigner would know how to be urgent for sure. But we'll see tonight, because I think this is, Tim, tell me if I'm wrong. It's not must win by the notion that no game in week 2 is must win, but I do think it's as close to must win as a game can be in week 2.
The only counter that I'd make to that is they've got 2 very winnable games the next 2 weeks, and then you get the Ravens before the bye. If you had told me that they were 3-2 going to the bye, I wouldn't rule them out. Even 2-3 isn't great, but I wouldn't rule them out. They've got the schedule like they always do to play into exactly what we just described. Not great early, troublesome late. They kick butt in October and November, and that's how they get to 9-8 or about that every year. And
then everyone says, a Mike Tomlin team never quits. You can always count on Coach T.
Yeah.
Seriously, I'm going deeper into that. He's an absolute fraud. For 10 years, 12 years, he's been an absolute fraud that gets propped up. I'm tired of it.
I'm tired of the phrase Mike Tomlin always keeps the ship afloat. Well, what if he pushed off from the dock better occasionally? How would that be?
Yeah, and what if he sank another ship more often?
Yeah, you sunk my battleship. Did you play Battleship, Mark, growing up?
Yes.
You could turn Battleship into a great drinking game. Battleship was quietly a very good drinking game.
I remember when Hyde and Leo played Battleship on that 70s show, and Hyde was getting frustrated because he couldn't get any hits. So he looked at Leo's board. Leo didn't have any of the ships on it.
Are we even allowed to talk about that 70s show anymore? Or do you get canceled for even talking about it these days?
Danny Masterson.
Exactly.
I think he's the new coach of the Blue Jackets.
We'll get to that in a little bit. Another couple of thoughts, 1 or 2 thoughts of the Steelers and the Browns. I want to go to T.J. Watt. He's probably going to set the sack record for the Steelers tonight. He's going up against DeJuan Jones, the right tackle that the Steelers looked at a little bit. A lot of the NFL looked at him, didn't think that he'd be in good enough shape despite being the size. He ended up playing really well in his first game, being thrust into action because of Conklin's injury for the Browns. He'll be lined up against Watt for the most part, outright tackle for Cleveland. He talked about how TJ is a great player, but sometimes leaves his chest open. The one thing I wouldn't have done is give TJ Watt bulletin board material if I'm the Browns going into this.
First off, as you're probably aware, I don't believe at all in bulletin board material. I think if TJ Watt and the Steelers can't find a reason to really want to keep from being 0-2 after losing 2 straight home games, the second to Cleveland, if they can't work up that desire organically, then it really will be a lost season. And what about the matchup of Myles Garrett against Dan Moore Jr.? Although Myles Garrett, I don't know if you've noticed this, and I know it's only one game, the Cincinnati game, he's moving all over the line more.
Yeah.
He's been lined up in the middle a few times against Cincinnati. That's going to be hard to deal with.
It will be. I think the most clearly identifiable matchup that's in favor of the Steelers going into this one is the 2 outside linebackers against the 2 tackles. I think this dovetails into a point that you made, Mark, a couple times in the offseason about sacks as a statistic and whether or not they are important or when they are important.
Haven't been that important for years except on 3rd down.
Yeah, TJ had 3 sacks and was a force, especially over the last 3 quarters. But, the horse was out of the barn already by the time he started to make an impact by sacking the quarterback. The timing of when the sacks happen, be it in the 4th quarter when the game is in the balance or stopping the bleeding in the 1st quarter when the game is in the balance, it's when you get the sacks that really matter more so than the raw number of them.
Well, again, 3rd down is the only time it matters. Okay, 1st and 2nd down, it's too easy to get the yards back. It's a good stat, but, that's
But if you sack him, you could get into dime, Mark, and then you could get Joey Porter Jr. on the field.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to play much. You know what? Tim, tell me if you think this is true. I think the more people clamor for guys to play, the less likely Tomlin is to play him. Because Tomlin, above all, needs to be right.
I think there was a lot of truth in that. I subscribe to that as part of the reason why I didn't bother thinking that Pickett would come in as quickly as he did against the Jets. I do think there was some stubbornness over the first few weeks about Pickett versus Trubisky last year. And then he just caved on it at halftime of the Jets game.
Because he got mad because Trubisky yelled at his guy, Deontay.
Well, that's part of it. Yes. Yeah. There's
too
something
big
to
a
that.
part of it. Shouldn't be involved at all. And by the way, Tim, let's cut to the chase.
About Pickett?
Yeah, he needs to win this game.
He needs to throw 2 touchdowns in a game. That'd be nice.
Hasn't done it in 14 games, Tim. And I'm sorry, if you look objectively, not through the pit-colored glasses, and boy, those are stained after that mess at Morgantown. But if you look at Pickett and not through pit-colored glasses, he's been crap for 14 games. Okay, his stats have been crap. His performance against San Francisco was crap. Okay, like we keep saying, he hasn't thrown more than 1 touchdown pass in a game yet. Ben did it 6 times in his first 14 games, and Ben threw less in those games than Pickett did in his. Okay, now it's early days with Pickett, but he's got to stand and deliver sooner or later. Pinocchio has to become a real boy, and tonight's a good night for that. Don't you agree? I mean,
yes.
At what point do the expectations come to fruition? Or do we just give him a free pass in perpetuity till he has the odd big drive like the twice last year, and then we canonize him?
No, and I'm not going to give him a free pass, and I haven't been giving him a free pass, nor have I.
You, but I mean, yeah. The city, the citizens, generically.
The only caveat, not a free pass, but I do remember kind of thing is a lot of the things that they were trying to get better at offensively, the whole use the middle of the field thing, try to get more big plays, have more of a run-pass balance. San Francisco is very good at taking a lot of those things away. Like, if they were trying to use the middle of the field more as an agenda for their offense, even if San Francisco is good at taking it away, do it tonight, because the Browns, one of their strengths is playing on the corners on defense.
Yes.
Use the middle of the field tonight against Cleveland.
Just win. I don't even want to overanalyze it more than that. Just win. You're a first-round pick. You've been crap for 14 games. Throw 2 touchdown passes, win the game. It's that simple.
Yeah, and if you do win this game and then you take care of business like you finally should, regardless of city, regardless of stadium, when you go out west, wherever it is, to play the Raiders and beat them and beat the Texans, you could be 3-1 going into the Ravens game. But if you put yourself behind the 8 ball, like you said, start 0-2, we've seen how this plays out. They put themselves in a corner. They got to scramble in October and November, and then you're hoping that, the Jaguars upset the Colts so you can get in as the 7 seed.
Well, I think that if Pickett doesn't start playing better, they're going to probably have to draft Phil Jerkovic. No, I just want him to win the game. And I don't think that's asking a lot at this point in the guy's career. He's not a rookie anymore. And I know San Francisco is a really good defense. Well, like you said, Cleveland's vulnerable in the middle. Use that. But, I mean, if he loses, Tim, it'll be all Canada and no Deontay and Pickens was hobbled and blah, blah, blah.
All right, so Steelers fans want to hear from you about the Browns game tonight. Are they going to win? And if so, how are they going to do it? Where are the biggest points of concern? Where can the Steelers exploit Cleveland? Go ahead and post your comments. We'll get to them in a little bit. Mark, you've made a couple of references to the backyard brawl over the weekend. Pitt loses to West Virginia. Phil Jerkovic was bad and has not been good over these last 2 games, as Pitt has lost 2 of them to Cincinnati at home and to West Virginia in the road. Then they get the 17th-ranked UNC Tar Heels on Saturday night. They're an underdog at home against North Carolina, as they should be. Is Jerkovic going to start, and should he start?
Well, Narduzzi already said he is, right?
He said he's going to look at the tape and sort of made a reference to you guys want to pull the plug too fast on people. So that leads me to believe that he's not going to make a change.
Yeah, well, whatever. You get what you deserve. I mean, when you and you get what you pay for too. Although I guess he's making, like somebody said, $800K in NIL money.
I don't know what he's making from Pitt. I know he got an Audi when he went to Boston College from Notre Dame.
Wow. Yeah, for a guy to be that bad and get paid like that, I guess it happens in pro sports, traditional pro sports all the time. Yeah, I wouldn't start him. I would have pulled him. You see, I would have pulled him against West Virginia, not only with trying to, rally and win that game, Tim, but to get a look at the other guy and see if maybe he's more worthy, if he can do it.
Yeah, and I don't know too much about him besides the acclaim that he had coming in, but no one paid too much attention to who he was because everybody was just talking about Jerkovic. And frankly, Mark, I think a lot of this is about Pitt chasing the ghosts of who they were back in the 80s and feeling like getting the local guy back attention to him 6 years ago. Now with the weird state of college, you can still get that guy. Like you can draft that guy's draft, so to speak. You can go out and sign that guy in college these days and go back in time. I think they're chasing that.
Well, then they should have got somebody better than Djokovic. I mean, he's awful. I mean, like, he's just terrible. And, you know, here's a guy who has underachieved his whole career. 3 schools, 6 years. He should be a doctor by now. And one thing that is the most discouraging about him is when you hear him comment about, you know, the fans are, what word did he use? Pathetic for booing him, right?
Mm-hmm.
The home fans. He doesn't get where his career's at. He doesn't get it at all. He won't let humility be a teaching tool.
And you said that this is a lot on Narduzzi. What, because of how he's handled him, because he hasn't benched him yet, because he's sort of feeding into this, he's feeding into that mentality. Is that what you're saying?
And maybe thought too highly of Djokovic when he brought him in.
And maybe he was relying on him too much, even though the pass game isn't working. Go to the run.
Absolutely, yes. I don't know how you can bring that guy in with what he did, or rather didn't do at Notre Dame, and his checkered performance at BC, and say, okay, this is the guy unconditionally. I don't know how Narduzzi could do that.
Got a lot of comments coming in. Pitt fans, you're more than welcome to comment too. Before we get to them, Mark, though, you made a couple references. You said you wanted on the podcast to talk more about this in Unfiltered today. The Columbus Blue Jackets situation with Babcock.
I'm not sure I did want to talk about it more, but yeah. I mean, you know, Jenner and Gaudreau said they had no problem. Apparently some younger players did. If you know, Babcock, what he did was intrusive, and I guess it's good he's gone. I just think it's ironic that Barstool Sports, through Spit and Chicklets, has now become part of cancel culture and a proud chest-thumping member of cancel culture. We're the player shows, Spit, Lube, etc., blah, blah, blah. Now, what about the 2018 World Junior Team, Canada, who allegedly sexually assaulted a woman? Is Spit and Chicklets going to investigate that now? I mean, don't get me wrong. I guess in some ways they did a service because, you know, Babcock, I mean, what he did was creepy at best. That's the nicest way to describe it. But did they do it out of altruistic reasons? I'm talking about Chicklets now.
Mm-hmm.
Or did they do it because their buddy Mike Commodore, who hates Babcock, said, hey, help me get this guy? And if they go on to look at other things, you know, in that vein, then yes, boy, they're Woodward and Bernstein. But I just think there are a couple of dumb ex-players who hit the jackpot.
Well, with it being Babcock, as you alluded to, a guy who was clinging on for one more job, it felt like. Is this just another case, Mark, you think of the easiest target in the world now is just somebody who's old and in charge? Is that?
Yes, yes, for sure. Emphasis on the first part, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But don't get me wrong. I'm not defending Mike Babcock. Nor Danny Masterson before. I mean, no, you know what I mean? I mean,
no, I know what you mean, but like, do we know, like, it's not like he didn't get charged with anything, right? I mean, was there even like a direct accusation that was brought up?
Well, first off, Tim, I want to say unequivocally that I am not supporting anybody who's ever done anything bad throughout history.
Yes.
Because you have to offer that disclaimer now.
Mm-hmm.
You do. You can't crack a joke without offering that disclaimer. I think if Mike Babcock wasn't an old coach who failed badly in Toronto, who pulled that stuff with Mitch Marner, which I thought was even more unforgivable, by the way, where he asked Marner to criticize teammates about their work ethic in private and then made what Marner said public to those teammates.
Right.
To me, that's worse than what Babcock did here. But I think him being in Columbus and a washed-up coach made all this easy to go down like it did.
All right, let's get to some comments here, and we'll start things off with Lee. He says, screw the Steelers. They'll lose 23-17. More importantly, who takes the Pens' final 7th D-man spot? You know, I know he's being sarcastic.
I refuse to answer this question today. It's just not important. Next.
You know what, though? If they get themselves in a situation like last year where they're 0-3, we might be talking about the 7th D-man soon. Ron says
maybe Ryan Whitney.
Ron says the Bungles are back. You know what? It's early for that because what were they, 4-4 last year, and then they closed out unbeaten. I just want to see where Burrow's leg is. If this is something that nags at him the whole way, then yeah, they are back. And somebody
but it's not because they're bungling.
No, it's because
they're a real good team that's off to a bad start with an injured quarterback. And to me, this does give rise to questioning their abject non-use of starters in preseason.
Boss says, I don't know what's more insufferable, the media fawning over the king of 9 and 8 or the nonstop coverage of Coach Prime.
It's a good question. I'd say the nonstop coverage of Coach Prime, at least today. But give the guy credit, he's 3-0. But you know what he's managed to do, Tim, that people don't want to mention? He has taken a college football program, correct, and made it totally about himself. Totally 100% about himself, except for his kids, who he compliments every second.
Well, I'll give him credit for more than anything else. He was right about the luggage, the Louis Vuitton. The talent that he brought is vastly upgraded that team. And, we spoke about this in the podcast a little bit today, not too much, but, the comment that was made by the Colorado State coach, I think Dion was willing to just let this game go by without much in advance. And then, the Colorado State coach decided that he was going to pick a fight. So
I thought what the Colorado State coach said was harmless about the hat and glasses. And by the way, my mom taught me the same thing. Well, she would have if I ever would have worn a hat and sunglasses. But yeah, he just made it all about himself. Him running all those players off, did he violate the ethos of college football by doing that? The responsibility to kids who made a commitment to that school. Now, you can argue he didn't, or I think more accurately, you can argue that because of the free transfer rules and the NIL money, there's a new ethos to college football. I think that's an argument well made. One thing I got to say is his kid's a real good quarterback.
Yeah, he is.
He's the most important Sanders there.
Richard says Tomlin has morphed into Marvin Lewis, and most Steelers fans haven't realized it yet. Well, I think, how many divisions did Marvin Lewis win? I'm wondering if even over the last 5 years, the division championship count was probably more in favor.
I realized it. I figured it out.
Probably more favor in Marvin Lewis, actually. You just look at the stats. It's been 6 straight years without a playoff win.
One thing I want to say, though, Tim, about Tomlin, and I'm going to talk about this on the show later this week, not today. There's so many people on Twitter who say that Tomlin doesn't get fired because of the Rooney Rule, i.e. the Steelers won't fire a black coach, let alone, since Dad came up with the rule, right? That has nothing to do with his tenure, his continued employment. Nothing. It's nothing to do with that and everything to do with them not wanting to fire a coach ever. Okay, Noel, Cowher, Tomlin, the next guy will serve 20 years too. That's just how they operate. It's not a race thing, not remotely.
Yeah, I think you can point to the latter part of the 80s, Chuck Noll's tenure, and see how long they held on to Noel. And you can look at the 3 years with Cordell from 98 to 2000.
Chuck wasn't black, was he?
Last time I checked, no.
No, there you go.
Yeah.
So, no, this has nothing to do with black. And those who say that, it's bad race baiting.
Bill says Chubb might go for 200 yards. Hate to say it. Let's talk about the absence of Cam Hayward and how much that affects things, Mark. Will it, or is this a case where they have to lean on a rookie in Keanu Benton because he might be the best player on the interior of the defensive line? And I think he played 43% of the snaps or something like that last week, but he graded out as like the 6th best interior defensive lineman in the NFL as a rookie in week 1.
Yeah, if you buy all that PFF stuff, which I do when it's convenient to my argument.
It's convenient to my argument right now.
Yeah, you see, I would play him more than anybody, actually. I would give him all the snaps he can handle. And since he did play 43% of the snaps the first week, maybe that's how it will transpire, unless they think too much and want to get the Leals and the Loudermilks and who's the real bum on Travius. They want to get those guys in there. But I like what we've seen of Keanu Benton. I think the way to stop Nick Chubb is to get a lead. I think if you get ahead by 10 points,
or even keep it close. Even keep it close. The Browns, for whatever reason, default away from using him in close games late. And they just
but I would get ahead and make sure. There's no rule says you can't put a game away in the first quarter. The Steelers want to keep it close till the 4th. They should want to win this one in the first, and that will go a long way toward neutralizing Chubb.
Eric says, given the decline, the need for running backs, do you think Najee's last year, this is Najee's last year in Pittsburgh, and will the team look to draft another one next year? Well, if there's a decline in the need, then they won't draft one, at least in the first round. They'll just get another Jaylen Warren or something like that. And Eric, I'd also say,
why are we talking about who they're going to draft next year? You're playing Cleveland tonight, you're 0-1.
Yeah, I think the other thing, he's still cheap. He's still on an entry-level deal.
And Tim, how many carries did he get last week?
Well, the whole team only had 10, and one of them was a quarterback scramble.
And that ties into what I'm saying, how they got to take the lead against Cleveland to take Chubb out of it. Okay? That's like the Jets. Breece Hall is that his name, Breece Hall?
Yeah.
Well, I'm amazed when I know the names of people on teams that aren't the Steelers or who they're not playing. What a football expert I am. He only had 4 carries. I mean, come on. You got to commit to the run more than that.
Don says Canada has no idea how to use the talent Pittsburgh has. The OC has to go.
Canada's fault. It's all Canada. The quarterback hasn't thrown 2 touchdowns in 14 games, but that's Canada's fault. The head coach hasn't won a playoff game in 6 years. That's Canada's fault. Canada. You're a dope.
If Kenny can't throw the ball down the middle of the field, he'll be out of the league in a couple years. He either does or he doesn't. Yeah, but I mean, the point I was making about that with San Francisco is if you force it down the middle of the field against that team, you're going to wind up with lots of mistakes. I think this is the game where you start using the middle of the field and all that stuff you worked on in training camp for the preseason more often, because that's where the Browns, if they are exploitable, it's more there than it is on the edges based on how those corners played against Cincinnati with Higgins and Chase.
And you got to do it right away. Right away.
Steve says, is Cignetti or Canada the worst OC in Pittsburgh? I think Canada has more to work with. But yeah, I think this guy, Mark, he's moved on to the next guy. He's already fired Canada in his mind, so he's going after the Pitt offensive coordinator.
And all
next.
the people who want to fire Canada, I can make a guarantee right now, Tim. You know who the next offensive coordinator of the Steelers will be? Whenever it happens.
Mike Sullivan.
Yep. Absolutely. And he'll be no better. Tomlin will never hire a guy who can challenge him for football knowledge, which sets the bar real low.
Mark, before we go.
Especially offensively.
How was the trip to Florida?
It's funny. I was in the great weather of Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, Florida, and it actually wasn't great. It rained. But from the moment I set foot inside the casino, I never left until I checked out.
Does all that recycled air get to you after a while? Were you feeling it?
All right. It's all right. You know what I should do at those places? I'm not a pool guy, but I should go to the pool early in the morning. Like my room overlooked the pool. If I would have gone in the morning, there would have been plenty of shade. You know what I mean? Because I hate the sun. But there would have been plenty of shade. I should have done it, but then it rained anyway. I'm the worst poker player ever. That's been established. I won money at blackjack. Didn't eat much because I'm doing that Manjaro.
What's that? Which one is that?
That's like Ozempic, where you inject it and it curbs your appetite.
You inject food?
No, I inject the drug that curbs my appetite.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You know about Ozempic? Of course you don't. You weigh 50 pounds. I had one decent meal. I mean, you can still drink, though. That was good.
Well, I was just going to ask you if you're talking about going to the pool in the morning. You Bloody Mary guy? Like, if you like Bloody Marys? Because you do like vodka, right?
I do, but I'm not a Bloody Mary guy. Guns N' Roses were real good. I mean, that's probably the last time I'll see them this year. I think they're doing a residency in Vegas next year. I'll go to that if they do. I went to the sports bar there, and I went after I played poker. I went to watch the West Virginia game, the Pitt game, and they wouldn't put it on. I was in this huge sports bar with 1 million TVs, but they already had games on that people were watching.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, Tim, in Hollywood, Florida, there wasn't a bunch of interest in the backyard brawl, so I had to go to my room to watch.
Yeah, Pitt's still in their national program, Mark. Let them keep telling you that as the ACC starts to fall apart.
Yeah, that actually says something, doesn't it?
A little bit, especially prime time at that point. Was everybody watching Colorado or something? Is that what people were watching?
Yeah, there was another game that was in progress, like an SEC game that was in progress. Forget what it was, but it was a great sports bar. I watched the length of Minnesota and who'd they play when Jefferson blew it, when he extended for the pylon and fumbled through the end zone.
I don't remember. I don't remember that one. Hold on, I can get that up. But
Yeah, we're sports experts, all right. Tim, I am going.
45 games this weekend. That one just escapes me.
Yeah, let me check here, Tim.
You lost a bet on that because of what?
No. They didn't have sports betting there, nor did they have.
You're talking about the Thursday night game?
Eagles.
The Eagles. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I was thinking about
yesterday. That? But no, how about this casino? Didn't have a sports book, although they're endeavoring to get that cleared. They didn't have craps or roulette either.
Are those because of gaming laws or what?
Yeah, it is. Like they had table games like blackjack and all those goofy like Mississippi Stud and high low and stuff. And they had a million slot machines, but they didn't. I guess it all has to do with cards. You have to have cards. They had poker. They had one of the nicest poker rooms I've ever seen, and I was the worst player in it.
Well, Mark, big news while you were gone. When Mr. Friday Afternoon came on the show on Friday, we actually broke the superconductor sound effect.
Super
Collider, yeah. We actually broke it. Yes. We hit it so many times. We started talking about the Super Collider so much, it actually had a snafu and melted in the machine, and all of a sudden a soundbite started to play in the middle of the interview. So we have to fix the Super Collider before Mr. Friday Afternoon comes back on this week.
Well, I talked to him last night. He says if we don't embrace Scientology more, he'll disconnect from us. he'll declare me a suppressive person. But I reminded him, and I will on the show, that his contract prohibits him doing that, and it is ironclad.
We will be back next week for Madden and Benz Unfiltered. We'll have 2 Steeler games to talk about. This one and the one against the Raiders by the time we're back with you next week. That's right.
Are the Raiders Sunday Night Football?
Yeah.
That's good for my viewing party, though.
Where's your viewing party?
I'm at Sidelines tonight, Sidelines in Millville.
Where are you for next week? Do you know?
I think Celebrations in Imperial, which is a great place.
Are you actually there for the show today? Or you're going between shows and between the show?
No, I'm doing my show in studio. I'm going to Sidelines in Millville. Tim, how about this for a trip in the past? Sidelines, a dozen wings for $10.
That's a good deal.
I know. What do you pay normally now? Like 50?
Something for a dozen? No, not for a dozen. But $10 sounds like a steal to me.
Yeah, and Coors Light, all that crap. And I'm a whore, so I'll plug it like out the wazoo.
Mark is on at 3 o'clock today from studio, then Sidelines. I'm going to be on at 4 o'clock on DVE for the pregame show, and we'll be back with you for Madden Benz Unfiltered after
I feel like we should simulcast the DVE pregame show on the X so I can just get out of there.
So you can just go to Sidelines right away and do the viewing party.
Come home and go to, you know what today is, Tim? And she's looking from a distance. Today is Clippers Gotcha Day.
What's that mean?
It means I got her 5 years ago.
This is when you adopted her?
Yeah, 5 years ago.
Bring back some chicken wings for her.
No, she ate something the other day and was sick. I was worried about her. You know what I did? You know how cats love milk?
Yeah.
I left cereal, like the remnants of a bowl of cereal on the table. She got up and drank the milk, and she threw up like the next day. And my vet says that, believe it or not, despite their cartoonish love for milk, that cats' stomachs aren't equipped to process milk.
We're going to have to go back and redo every Heathcliff cartoon then.
Tom and Jerry.
Yes, Tom and Jerry.
We could take the milk out, but not the unspeakable violence.
I was just about to say, what if people tried to make Tom and Jerry originally now in 2023? How long did that cartoon last?
One of my favorite routines, and we're running long here, but the hell with it. I love, as you know, National Lampoon Magazine.
Yes.
Doug Kenny, founding editor, the scriptwriter for Caddyshack and Animal House, died tragically young. One of my biggest influences. And if I could even be 5% as funny as him, I'd consider it a great accomplishment. And National Lampoon did not as much video available then, but they did comic books based on real life Bewitched, real life Tom and Jerry, and real life Hogan's Heroes. Oh, okay.
I can see 2 of those being a problem nowadays.
Well, the scene with 2 demons doing a 3-way with Samantha was rather jarring. But apparently that's how she derived her power. But it ended with the neighbors burning her and Dora and Darren at the stake.
Okay, that's when I said 2 of the 3. That's the one I thought you could maybe get away with. So I guess I was wrong.
Mrs. Kravitz was snooping, and they put her eyes out. and you know what the last panel says? It shows them being burned at the stake, and Darren's yelling, "Sam, do something!" and they're, you know what Sam and Dora are doing as they're burned at the stake? Saying the Lord's Prayer backwards. You're right. The Tom and Jerry one just ended with a lot of dismemberment and
yes, like the
can't
Simpsons, Itchy and Scratchy.
I can't even remotely say how the Hogan's Heroes one went.
All right, that'll do it for us. We're back next week. Madden and Benz Unfiltered.